Did you know that a small Midwestern town was once home to one of the largest boxing gyms in the world? Every day, the people of Kalamazoo, Michigan, walk down streets where Muhammad Ali once walked and work where Floyd Mayweather Sr. once trained. From the 1960s to the 1980s, Kalamazoo was a boxing powerhouse. Oliver Lewis, Lionel Ford, Sean Thomas, Eddie B. Stokes. These names may have faded in our memories, but those who lived in Kalamazoo in the 70s remember the Kalamazoo Boxing Academy.
Boxing is a sport that can get in your blood. One of the oldest sports in the world.
The 1950s saw a surge in the popularity of boxing in the United States. Professional matches were easy to produce for television and didn't take long before boxing champions became household names.
They hear boxing on the radio, they saw it on TV by the 1960s.
The boxing game was blessed to have a lot of coverage from the media, television, radio.
Boys coming of age in the 1970s grew up hearing about Sugar Ray Robinson, Jersey Joe Walcott, and eventually Muhammad Ali. Televised bouts were fun and exciting to watch. Boxing gave black and working class men the opportunity to find glory in a country torn apart by political conflict. Their victories inspired a nation. Boys all over the U.S. participated in amateur fights with big dreams of becoming the next Ali, Foreman, or Frazier. The Golden Gloves competitions bestowed highly coveted titles. Boxing was especially popular in Michigan. The first Tough Man competitions were held in Bay City. Emanuel Stewart and his Kronk Gym in Detroit were nationally famous.
I think a lot of the interest came with Golden Gloves tournaments. Local athletes fight in the Golden Gloves and win titles, and they draw big crowds.
Kalamazoo was a great fight town. You know, whether we had the fights at the Wing Stadium or at one of the high schools, an eclectic group of people would come to the fights, and the reception was just terrific.
In the 1970s, the avid sports fan and clever businessman Henry Grooms decided to put Kalamazoo on the map of the boxing world. He worked with trainer Eddie Bridges to found the Kalamazoo Boxing Academy and Professional Management Enterprises.
When I started the Gazette, boxing there wasn't much done with it. And then because of Henry Grooms, they wanted the Gazette to promote it, and Jack Moss did a great job of doing that, and I kind of picked up on it too.
The gym was known for its high-class facilities, excellent trainers, and its celebrity visitors.
We had one of the best gyms in the country. Boxing in Kalamazoo was the thing to watch, the thing to go to. Then you had the Don King boxing fight-offs, 75, 76, 77. And we had so many of our fighters in that tournament, and we were watching them on CBS. Mayweather, Coverson, Granham, all these guys that we trained with every day were in these tournaments, and that was just amazing.
Henry Grooms' Kalamazoo Gym rose to prominence in the boxing scene before ultimately fading into history. Even so, his gym forever changed the lives of the men, the teammates, the brothers who fought there side by side. For the first time in 30 years, these men have come together to tell the story of the Kalamazoo Boxing Academy.
Well, my name is Oliver Lewis.
My name is Courtney Hooper.
I'm Dan Hornak.
My name is Lionel Ford Sr.
My name is Arnold Dean Mackey.
My name is Eddie B. Stokes.
My name is Glenn Ford.
I'm Roger Rooks.
I'm Kelvin Thomas.
My name's Raymond Pratt.
My name is Floyd Mayweather Sr., better known as Floyd Joy Mayweather Sr.
My name is Too Sweet Coverson. Whenever I knocked them out, I would do it so sweet that they had to add something on to the Too Sweet. So now they call me Too Sweet Candyman Coverson.
My name's Al Fracker.
My name is Danny Bridges.
My name is Dave Staten.
My name is Richard Deonda. My name is Robert Deonda. Everybody calls me Bobby D.
I'm Jack Bear.
My name is Timothy Fennessy. I'm born and raised in Kalamazoo, Michigan.
My name is Henry Grooms. Some people, call me Hank. I developed the KBA and had the best amateur boxing team in the state of Michigan.
Old sports fans will remember people like Eddie Bridges, Henry Grooms.
The Kalamazoo Boxing Academy grew out of a partnership between two men, Henry Hank Grooms and Junior Edward Eddie Bridges.
I'm from Pennsylvania. My father passed when I was 9 years old in the coal mines.
After his father's death, his mother raised him in a shack without windows or indoor plumbing. Despite his meager living situation, Grooms poured his energy into athletics.
I participated in football, was recruited then by Massillon, Ohio. After Massillon, I got recruited into service.
Grooms discovered boxing in the military, where he used his talent as a fighter to win himself a leadership position in his unit. After retiring from the service, Henry moved to Michigan, where he pursued a career in law enforcement. He was the first African-American sheriff deputy in Kalamazoo County.
Henry Grooms was a deputy sheriff of the Kalamazoo County Sheriff's Department. He told me he never pulled his gun. He never pulled his revolver out on anybody.
Got a job in security at Fisher Body, General Motors, where I had an opportunity to meet a gentleman named Eddie Bridges, who worked in tool and die.
Junior Edward Bridges was a humble and unassuming man. His friends called him Eddie. Born in a town of 300 people near the Mississippi River, he began working at the Fisher Body General Motors plant in Kalamazoo in the 1960s. Eddie had a passion for boxing and a 16-1 record, but a shattered nose led him to retire and become a trainer.
My dad, Eddie Bridges, he was one of the top trainers around. And my dad was a little man. Now, he only weighed 140 pounds. I remember him knocking one guy that was a heavyweight right through the ring. And his trainer looked at him while he was laying there and said, well, you're not going to fight pro.
He had a set of rules that he lived by. So he was a great example for the young guys. Because we said, if this old guy can do it, we can do it.
Well, Eddie was just really quiet. Wasn't a real huggy, lovey type of guy, but you just knew that he cared about you.
He would always talk about his boxers, not Eddie Bridges.
We became very good friends. I then said to him, I'm going to try to do something in boxing in the city of Kalamazoo, a facility to help youngsters get to a good basic understanding of life so that they would never be incarcerated for any kinds of crime because they would not be committing them. And we discussed joining forces.
Henry and Eddie found great success together, but they didn't always see eye to eye. In the 60s, before the Boxing Academy was established, they developed separate teams that trained at several different locations throughout Kalamazoo.
I went to Lincoln School. I started to do the boxing with one set of boxing gloves.
There was a little room off to the side, a wrestling room. And so when we go in there and train.
We had no money, had no boxing ring, etc. We had to hold hands to encompass the ring.
And Eddie was training fighters on the side from the KBA.
I started training under Eddie Bridges, and it was down at the Y.
And there's probably 20 of us there, so we trained there and then fought eventually in the tournaments in Grand Rapids.
The Y wasn't going to let us box there anymore. They had to use the space for other things. We boxed out in this old barn in Mattawan for probably that whole summer.
We set up a ring in the big barn. We sparred there. The owner of this great field was so gracious to allow us to use his farm. His name was Jim Block. He was one of the famous fighting Block brothers out of Kalamazoo.
Then we went downtown Kalamazoo to an old vacant retail shop.
We ended up at the Kalamazoo Boxing Academy. We merged with them.
The Kalamazoo Boxing Academy started around 1972.
Henry Grooms and Eddie Bridges, the two real boxing icons in Kalamazoo, combined their whole fighting stables together.
I then felt I needed to get some financial assistance. I went to Upjohn's. I went there 26 times before I had the opportunity to get in to talk to Ted Parfit, who owned Upjohn's. I tried to give him some insight about having a facility to help youngsters. He said no. In 5 days, he gave me a call saying that he had spoken to his wife and his family, and they felt that he should talk about moving forward, creating a gym. I found a building that was on the mall, and the Kalamazoo Boxing Academy was born.
It was on Burdick Street, where the Uptown Theater used to be. You had to go up some stairs, and there was Henry's office, there was the ring.
You go to Mr. Grooms' office, which was always immaculate, and you go into this gym.
I couldn't believe this beautiful facility.
The equipment was all new.
I ain't never in my life seen a gym like this. You could eat off the floors.
Downstairs they had a ring for kids 15 and under, and upstairs they had 2 rings with a wall of mirrors.
We had the shower rooms, we had lockers.
Towels were furnished in the KBA. Soap was furnished in the KBA.
You could go and fight in your amateur fights wearing professional gear. Not everybody has the opportunity to do that.
I mean, it was fun, you know, because we had all the equipment. All thing we had to do was just work it.
I had been to Detroit's gym. I went with Archie Moore. I've been to his gym. And even these professional gyms wasn't better than the KBA. KBA had everything.
The boxers behaved themselves more in an establishment like that. They were more respectful of each other. Both Ed Bridges and Henry Grooms played the instrumental part of that.
It was so popular in Kalamazoo and vicinity. You would see those blue and gold jackets all over town. And people saw them so much they started wondering, what is the KBA? What is the KBA?
Individuals that were entrepreneurs in the city and came to see what the gym looked like or what was going on.
A lot of sponsors, I think the Gilmores, Ziegler's, a lot of the people that are well-to-do in Kalamazoo were big contributors to that.
Henry was quite an operator. He was actually responsible for bringing the Kalamazoo Wings hockey team to Kalamazoo. He envisioned building a stadium and staging big fights there. Got on the good side of president of the Upjohn Company. He sold him on the hockey idea.
Well, that's where I fought my first professional fight, right here at Wing Stadium. And we all made money, you know.
KBA began to fill up with an enormous amount of fighters. We began to function at no cost to anybody.
The Kalamazoo Boxing Academy was the finest boxing academy I was ever in.
It was such a first-class, professional, and amateur boxing gym.
If you're gonna be a good fighter or a great fighter, I suggest you try to find the right trainer.
A lot of people don't realize that it's more than just swinging leather.
I'm talking about the true science of boxing. The Muhammad, Sugar Ray, all those guys, that's science right there.
We had like 4 or 5 trainers back then. You know, you can learn something from each and every one of them.
He had Eddie Bridges working with the amateurs from 16 years old and up. He had Robert Mitchum and Del Turner who were working with the professionals. I got the kids from as young as 8 sometimes up to 15 years old.
We had Frank Nitty Burrell. He was Sugar Ray Robinson's sparring partner. He was the junior welterweight champion of the world. He would stand me up to a pole, and I'd have to tap the pole for that was my jab. Here was my hook. Here was an uppercut.
My basic fundamentals of boxing always came from Ed Bridges.
He was a tactician, very technical. He'd just jab, right hand, left hook, footwork.
He taught you the real fundamentals of fighting, how to get down and dirty in the clinches. And he wasn't afraid to hit you bare knuckle to let you know what he was talking about.
Elbows in, chin down.
You run in place like this, then your chin starts going up. Get that chin down. Whoop, whoop.
Eddie encouraged me to go out and pick apples with him because he said picking apples was good eye-hand coordination.
I had to run. Start off with a mile, get up to 2, run hard to get your wind up.
Go in and spar two rounds. You'll be winded. You probably won't make 2 rounds.
And we would run down the Woodward Street to the Versailles Park, and we would run around that park. One of the trainers, like Mitch Mitchell, he'd be driving along in a car, and he would be passing out hand weights to you.
For wrist, we had a wrist roller. You put a 25-pound dumbbell on it and turn it like this for your wrist.
Strengthen your neck to take punches.
He teach you, do your neck like this. I used to sit around in the living room watching TV, strengthening my neck up doing that stuff.
Eddie Bridges, he always taught me bob and weave because, you know, you're short.
You got to do a lot of sit-ups, which I didn't do. I thought I knew more than Eddie. He said, you're going to need to work on your sit-ups. Both times I lost in the finals, it was because a guy hit me in the breadbasket, and I was kind of stunned. I learned that he was a lot wiser man than I thought, even in boxing.
He wasn't in it for himself. He was in it to help somebody achieve a goal.
He could connect with the kids, too. They respected him.
He had trust and faith, and we trained together. When you do something with somebody and then put time, and they put time in with you, you honor that person more.
They weren't getting paid for me. I was just an amateur. And it was just the fact they loved it. They showed me, like they knew I was going to blossom to be something.
So I felt loved. I wasn't just a fighter, I was a son.
Eddie was there. He protected me, and that's what a good coach needs to do.
I don't remember him ever letting anybody fight unless they were in shape.
Mr. Bridges had more respect walking into the Golden Gloves arena, into a high school where our matches would be, than any other coach that I've ever seen in the state of Michigan besides Emanuel Stewart. When Bridges came, they knew that he was bringing a boxing team.
I wouldn't be who I am today if it wasn't for Eddie.
Boxing really taught me how to be a man. It proves to you that you can do anything.
Henry had not only developed some really good amateurs, but also had brought in some professionals.
During that beginning, I met a gentleman named Dave Thatch. He became my first professional fighter. I felt the need to have a dual facility. PME, Professional Management Enterprises for the pros, the KBA for the amateurs. The amateurs were able then to raise their talents to be able to box with the professional fighters that were achieving world rating, television fights, world titles.
I began to be sparring partners with Richard Fly Roselle. He was a lightweight champion, world champion. I began to knock out people in 17 seconds.
I would pick up things from Mayweather's, Coverson, phenomenal fighters.
They were coming from Detroit and various places. So I opened a house called the KBA House.
Pro fighters lived there. I remember Lynn Hutchins and Top Cat Jackson, when he come to town, would stay there.
Stayed at the KBA House. We had 6 or 7 rooms with 2 beds in each room, so you could have 12 fighters there. I said, this is a dream come true right here.
I was treated good there. Mitch or Dale will cook for us sometime, or sometime we cook ourselves. A house of love, that's what it was.
You see the gym shoes, you see the boxing gloves, stuff they was working out in, they throw it over the chair. I still ride by there and look at that house, man. It was just like he was in the midst of greatness.
From television, international, national television network, Howard Cosell came to see the KBA House. The newspaper writers in Detroit and Chicago came. And out of that success and the KBA history, Muhammad Ali heard about it, and Herbert Muhammad. they come to see the KBA.
He was able to bring in some, like Muhammad Ali. Most people would have trouble trying to get an interview with him. He was living in Berrien Springs at the time.
I got a call from Jack Moss saying, Henry, someone told me Muhammad Ali is on the mall, heading toward your building. He says, some people tell me that he called your name, said he'd come looking for the KBA and Mr. Grooms.
Gosh, Leon Spinks shows up. He gets out of training and goes down to Messiah's Bar, and people love him down there, and he loved them.
When the secretary told me, Mr. Spinks, the champion of the world, is at the airport. He wants you to come and pick him up with his entourage. I said, you tell Leon Spinks and his entourage get a cab. That's just a hoax. Somebody playing with your head. There's nobody there. So then she buzzes me and says, Henry, Leon Spinks, the champion of the world, and his entourage is in the waiting room.
Kalamazoo by itself was getting a lot of notoriety, and which drew young people down to the gym.
There were a lot of kids here waiting to see Muhammad Ali.
In high school, I'd done a book report on a former two-time world heavyweight boxing champion named Floyd Patterson. I had a chance to meet Floyd Patterson, and it was just an honor to see so many celebrities come into the city of Kalamazoo.
Mr. Grooms had about 5 or 6 world champions in his stable at one time. Amazing that here in Kalamazoo, Michigan, when you realize that Kalamazoo is not a big place, but to have world champions in the midst, where little guys, young teenagers can idolize and make themselves into what they have become in a sport that is tough.
Kalamazoo was holding fights, hosting fights. The community just seemed to be very receptive to boxing.
I did the first event at Hackett High School, I believe. It sold out.
We had a name. KBA was something to be a part of.
The Kalamazoo Wing Stadium had game here, the hockey stadium, and we began to have fights out there. And the whole crowd of people could recognize you as an amateur fighter. That made you feel so good.
For my first fight, I got into the ring at Hackett High School's Harfreeman Gymnasium in late April of 1968, and I fought a gentleman by the name of Sonny Jordan. I not only knocked him out, but I knocked him out of the ring. And what a way to come into the boxing game.
I heard about a boxing team, and I heard it was coached by a gentleman by the name of Eddie Bridges. And he put me in the ring with his top fighter by the name of Arnold Mackey. And that was my first experience with competitive training. In 2 weeks, Eddie Bridges had me registered to fight in the Michigan Golden Gloves in Grand Rapids.
Golden Gloves is a major boxing event for amateurs in the country. It's a very coveted title to win. They qualify for the national championship competition if they win the state championships.
The Golden Gloves was held at the Civic Center. We were fighting guys from all over Michigan. Our family would go, our mother would go, my sister would give them somewhere to go, something to do.
So the crowd was so big, you just start sweating and all the adrenaline be running.
The Golden Gloves was a very scary thing at first for me. I was just noticing all the fighters coming up before me. I'm like, man, these guys are cold, Eddie Bridges, he told me, he said, man, if you can handle these pros, what you gonna do about these guys here? I said, yeah, I'm hanging with the pros, It really felt good, to win, come home with a first place trophy.
Half of our whole stable were champions. They were just one champion after another.
We escalated, a lot of us, from the novice right into the open. I remember the first time I fought a man with hair on his face. I said, I'm getting ready to fight a grown man. And I won over this grown man.
I fought some guy, Julius Foster, I think his name was. Lionel Ford from Kalamazoo, he's fighting with a broken foot. Not only beats the first guy he fights, but then he just tears Foster up.
My next 2 years, I was a state finalist in both years. won the 1972 Michigan Golden Gloves in the 165-pound weight class.
I won one year and then I won the next year, and I enjoyed winning the championship.
In the timeline of 78 and 79, Kalamazoo had reached the pinnacle of the beginning of a great heyday. At this time, the top amateur fighters were my brother Sean Thomas and Eddie B. Stokes. They went and became national champions in Hawaii in 1977-78 season.
They came from all over to see just who was Eddie B., who was Sean Thomas. I fought, I trained for it. I dreamed, you know, just to be able to say I made it.
When we reached a certain level, and I think this started around 78, they gave us Kalamazoo Boxing Academy jackets.
Since we were in Michigan, I chose the colors of the University of Michigan, the blue and the gold. I chose to have the kangaroo with the glove. Everybody knew it was the KBA because they saw that kangaroo.
We came in with the blue and the gold on. People stepped literally out of our way. We were the West Side champions, and Emmanuel Stewart's Kronk Gym was the East Side of the state champions.
We actually recognized KBA as the best boxing gym around at that point in time. And every time a boxer from KBA went in the ring, you knew you had someone to contend with.
We would go from Indiana, Ohio. It got to be a big deal to have Kalamazoo fighters showing up.
Fighters look forward to going home every day, picking up the Kalamazoo Gazette and reading what we had done.
You could always catch a highlight in the newspaper from Jack Moss, you know, and so we all began to feel good.
In the Kalamazoo Gazette, they had a photograph of me when I knocked Sonny out. So that was big for my ego. I was 16 years old at the time.
The Oliver Lewis's, the Lionel Fords, Courtney Hoopers, they are the catalysts that made Henry Grooms to have opportunities to make the KBA become nationally famous.
I was a 3-time Golden Glove champion, something that I will always be able to hold on to. Nobody can take away from me. To have your hand raised in victory is the greatest feeling of all.
Being born in 1952, there were racial tones. I dealt with the bias all my life, you know.
And just growing up, period, you know, in Kalamazoo, it was a little racial.
The founding of the Kalamazoo Boxing Academy came on the heels of a historic change in Kalamazoo, the desegregation of schools. Kalamazoo public schools weren't segregated by law, but in 1968, a study revealed that 90% of black children attended just 5 of Kalamazoo's 29 elementary schools. In 1971, the city began to redraw school district lines in order to balance the racial divide. Young KBA boxers experienced these changes firsthand.
They didn't want the black kids to be there, so they used to have a lot of fights, you know, on the way home from school. They got mud billy clubs and chains and all this, and we just got our hands, and I was like, oh, I can't get hurt. They didn't want us at their school at that time.
The Kalamazoo Boxing Academy hosted a racially diverse group of fighters and trainers. It was an oasis amid the tensions of the time.
With my coach, Eddie Bridges, I felt no bias whatsoever. Being born in the 50s, if there was any type of bias or prejudice, I would have definitely known about it.
The boxers came from all over. White guys, black guys, Hispanic guys. We're all up there training together, sweating and blood and tears and cheering for each other.
But when you're in the ring with somebody, you beat those boundaries down. Race, whatever, class, whatever, all that falls away. After you spend 3 rounds in the ring or more with somebody, you're both really happy that you're still alive and you got through it.
I mean, we got along with everybody. It was more enjoying the excitement of being where we were at. So it wasn't racist.
Everybody was accepting us as who we are and what we were doing and trying to make the community better. The boxing helped bring us together.
Any racial tensions or anything that they were seemed to come from the general public up in the balcony at the Civic Auditorium.
The judges and officials, as far as my experience, I thought everything was fair. The most bias was in the crowd, and it was notable, and it was audible. When a black guy hit the white guy, whoa, all the black people. The white guy hit the black guy, all the white people. Ah, you know, it was like that.
You go into the arenas and everybody be hollering different words and, you know, saying stuff, you know, but the thing of it is you had to block it out and go ahead and compete.
You know, the fellas like, man, don't lose to no white boy. We gonna dog you out. You know what I'm saying? But if he's a better fighter, you ain't got no choice. My first fight was against a white guy, you know? And that first punch, it was like, I can hear Eddie over there. Do what I taught you, what I tell you. You listen to me, everything I tell you is gonna be truth and gonna be right.
It was interesting for me personally because other than the military, I grew up in Michigan Center, Michigan. My only experience with black people was boxing and then in the military. I went to Oliver Lewis's house and I walked into his garage and you're gonna think I'm a nut, but I'm like, wow, they've got rakes and shovels just like we do. You know, here I'm 20 years old when this happens to me, right? And so I'm getting goosebumps thinking about it because it's so stupid, but it's reality. I started seeing injustices. Restaurants would treat us differently. We'd go into stores and people would, you know, be checking us out. That's when I first became aware, if you will, of what was really happening or what the other side of the story.
Eddie would go to the bar or we'll go to a motel. It still had the black and white thing. If he wanted a cab, he could get a cab. And the cab driver said, what you doing with that? You know, what you doing with that? You know, well, you can ride, he can't ride. But Eddie would still stick his head up. He stood up for me a lot of times when I would have just gave up.
It brought us all together no matter what color your skin was, where you came from. My oldest son, who's now 48, and he boxed, as I told you before, with us, and came to me the other day and thanked us for bringing him up the right way. Being with these kids all the time. Sure, we were mentors and we helped them, but it meant a lot to us.
Eddie Bridges really was my, you know, really helped me out a lot. And to be a white man, and that really got me. You know, it's just about boxing and you.
There were some fighters that would die from results of a fight. Some would concuss in the ring, some would afterwards, but eventually they would, you know, perish from that.
There was one professional boxer named Sean Thomas, a local favorite, had one of the greatest records ever by an amateur in the city of Kalamazoo.
My brother Sean, he led the way. He had won several Southwest Michigan boxing championships, ranked #1 in the nation. You know, he was funny, he always cracked jokes, and he drew people like a magnet. And we were the Boxing Thomas brothers. In 1983 and 84, my brother Sean turned pro. Sean, going into the 84 and 85 season, had got so good that he was now getting ready to fight for the ESPN championship. We were sitting at home watching Sean fight for the ESPN championship, my mother and myself. He's fighting, I believe, the Tennessee Rebel. He's hitting behind the head, and Sean is complaining.
Sean was leaning outside of the ropes. His opponent started hammering him, and he sort of fell out of the ring.
But this guy is steadily hitting him in the back of the head. But the ref says, you know, hey, I'm the ref, you keep on fighting.
He leaned against the ropes, the fighter was hitting him. It was illegal punching.
Sean caught an aneurysm in the back of the head, ended up going to the hospital, and about a month later, it was all over.
I was here, and I said, where is Sean Thomas? So they said, Henry, you don't know about Sean? I said, what you mean I don't know? Where is he? They said, Sean Thomas is dead, Henry, he's passed.
I stopped boxing the day he died. Because that was my best friend. He got me into boxing. And I felt like if they could let him die in the ring like that, it could happen to me.
If I would have been around, he'd be living. The minute that he said he couldn't see, or his head snapped back several times because the referee is not doing his job, I would have stopped the fight. You don't have to get the referee, just go up the steps, and when you go up the steps and you're on the apron of the ring, the fight is over. It would have been over over, you see.
My mother literally drove me out of boxing. She'd be staring at you while you're training, you know what I mean? And I was the baby of the family. You just don't want to disappoint your mother.
I was very fortunate to be part of a committee that recommended safety aspects in the game of boxing, allowing boxers the option of using headgear, with the implementation of thumbless gloves.
I believe that all the kids, young kids, need to have safety helmets on at all times in the ring.
I think it's a necessity that there should be some headgear. I talked to some guys that I fought with, and they probably need a little more headgear. Their cognitive reactions are, they were a fighter.
After about 6 years of competitive fighting, it was getting next to me mentally, where I found myself not being able to complete a sentence. I would take a break every year after that.
I know a number of fighters. They do twitch, they have equilibrium problems.
The young fighters today should have headgear, wear some protection.
Even though my brother has passed away in the 85 and 86 year, I have great memories. I know he's not shortchanged because he was a champion. It was just a fluke thing that does happen in boxing. People can get critically hurt, and you gotta know that.
Back then, we did not wear headgear. Back then, we didn't wear a shirt. One thing I want to say about boxing, it's a lot safer now.
In the neighborhood that I grew up in, very rough, very tough, and dangerous neighborhood. But as I listened and watched Muhammad Ali, and he talked about how he fought his way out of the ghetto. So my thing was, if Muhammad Ali could do it, I could do it.
But a lot of boxers had a bad upbringing or poor upbringing or whatever happened, I don't know, and they got into boxing, and it helped a lot of them out. To get kids out of the street and teach them something besides fighting in the street, getting into drugs.
What do you do with these kids that are just turned away? You can't play football because your grades aren't good enough. We bring them in and we try to change them around with their school and with everything else.
It gave you a sense of belonging, and then everybody got to being like family.
And we would hang out together, eat together, be invited over to Eddie Bridges' house, and we all grew very close.
We even basically kept each other out of trouble because we knew that we were boxing royalty. And anything that we did affected the whole community. And if somebody did something wrong, it would hurt Jack Moss, the editor for the Kalamazoo Gazette. And he would come down to the gym and give a guy a talk that you cannot be doing this. Don't break the law, don't commit any crimes. You're hurting me.
You were changing into another person. I took that time to help those that had problems with bullies. Now I can protect somebody.
Got in a little trouble when I was young, and I went down to the KBA and I met Eddie Bridges, and he took me in like a son, taught me how to box, taught me how to be a good student, just made me feel so good.
I'm the first one graduated high school. Mama didn't go no more into 3rd or 4th grade. He would always come get me, encourage me, do my homework, everything. He was just like a father to me.
He'd ask you, like, what are you doing? What he wanted an answer was that you're not out drinking, carousing, you're doing the right things, not only in training, but in life.
Boy, I used to be a bad little kid. There was times I had trouble in school. I had trouble with the police. Henry Grooms came in there and helped me. He would take me out to the stores, buy me clothes, bought my groceries for me. My father, he wasn't really there for me, but Henry was always there for me.
A lot of young ladies and young men that I came up with, they never seen the age 18. There was a church called King Solomon. They had a gym in the basement. Robert Mitchell came over to me and he talked to me for a minute. He said, "You would like to learn how to box?" I said, "Yes, sir." So he put me up under his wings. He came to me one day and he said, "Son, I'm gonna take you up to Kalamazoo and turn me pro. He changed my life. This man changed my life.
The biggest part was when I met Greg Cupperson. He took me from that day till I got there.
It gave me courage that I never knew I had.
It builds confidence for some kids that may not have ever had confidence. And it's a sense of accomplishment. It's a sense that, hey, I can do this.
All these kids, and it goes from there into their families and into the neighborhoods. When you see people doing things right in front of you, winning state championships, being in the newspaper, that does something. It just changes your perspective of life when you're good at something, and you know you're good at something.
The story starts off full of big dreams, excitement. Everything was going well.
Boxing can take you to the hemisphere, or it can take you down to places, you know, that you shouldn't be.
There's a lot of corruption in boxing. That big Wild World of Sports scandal, if you will, came up. Professional Management Enterprises was involved in some things that weren't as clean as what they could have been.
In 1976, Henry Grooms became associated with the notorious celebrity boxing promoter Don King. King was famous for managing some of the most important boxers of the era, but he became a central fixture in the smarmy underbelly of professional boxing. King's business strategy in the late 70s was to promote as many champions as possible. He began to sign contracts with small-time managers and their fighters in exchange for entry into his hotly anticipated new tournament, the United States Boxing Championships. King also had an under-the-table deal with Ring Magazine, the boxing Bible of the time.
One of the scandals was involving ratings. They'll boost the record of some of these guys so they will get bouts. They weren't all legitimate, that's for sure.
If one of King's fighters didn't qualify for the championships, the magazine would allow inaccurate records to slide in order to keep the ratings of these fighters high. Managers associated with King also organized matches that guaranteed wins for their fighters, regardless of those fighters' skill level or safety.
They shot me out to Vegas. That's the only fight I could think of that I was scared in. This guy was too big, too strong. And when he hit me, the glove cut the inside of my eye. The eye doctor looked in my eye. He told Henry Grooms and my trainer, if he would have put anything in his eye, any eye drops, any water, he would have lost his eye and we would have had to take his eye out. What Henry did, I never trusted him again.
They take a guy like me and they give me 10 bum fights, people that hadn't had a winning record in 4 or 5 years. I win the fight, and guess who gets rated, and guess who gets the title shot. And the manager, instead of looking out for his fighter, say, hey, that's money for me, I get 50% of that stake. Did that happen with Henry Grooms? I don't know.
Once the Ring Magazine scandal broke, ABC canceled the United States Boxing Championships. While Don King never saw justice for his underhanded behavior, the scandal left stains on the smaller fighters and managers who became involved. When Henry Grooms was accused of fudging records, he explained that any inaccuracies in his fighters' ratings were due to secretarial errors and oversight.
You needed 10 wins to get rated in the top 10. I said, well, I've got 6. Well, you need 10. Well, no, just, come up with some dates and names. No, I'm not gonna do that, Well, then this scandal breaks and all of a sudden I get accused of lying.
Grooms' alleged involvement in the scandal damaged PME's reputation, and by extension, the reputation of the KBA.
KBA House, gosh darn. Floyd Mayweather, Richard Rosell, Greg Cupperson, Fonzel Johnson, they're all living there. They'd have a fight. Instead of getting the $10,000 in their contract, oh, by the way, we're gonna now we're gonna take this rent out, we're gonna take this food out, and then all of a sudden they walk away with a check for $2,000 and say, wait a minute, I fought for 10,000 bucks. Well, I saw this, I didn't like it.
Fighters wanted out of the contracts. We just didn't really know what was going on as we seen guys coming and going and the kind of feuding that would go on in the gym.
I went on and had a professional boxing career. I had some managerial issues at that time, and it led to my retirement the following year.
Greg Coverson decided he wanted to do something else. Richard the Fly Roselle had won and decided that he wanted to be a family man.
And everybody started leaving. I was the last one that left Henry Grooms.
Eddie never got involved in that end of it as far as calling in results.
I think he probably did the right thing when he left.
Things they just wasn't going right. I was going to the gym to work out. It was locked and I had no way to get in, so this happened for about 6 weeks.
Summer comes, I go to the gym to go to work, and there's a sign on the door. It says, "Gym will be closed to amateurs for the summer." So, what? I'm the youth director. I mean, nobody talked to me about this. And so I went in, I said, "What's going on?" I said, "Well, we need to focus on the pros." Summertime, there's no school. That's when the kids get in trouble. So I quit.
The beginning of '87, when this whole thing began to shut down and close, Mr. Grooms ended up packing up and going to Florida.
One of the wealthiest people in Tampa came to the KBA. He wanted me to move to Tampa and bring everything I had from the KBA. Parfit said, "Henry, it's a major opportunity. You need to try to go to the next level in a bigger place." So we packed up the things of the KBA and I went to Tampa, Florida.
Boxing had left really when Grooms left. It's not like it was when we was coming up.
I have some misgivings because I don't want to come across as being a disgruntled former fighter. Henry did a lot for the kids, and the world is a better place because of him.
All of them had boxing at heart, and they all wanted to promote boxing, and young people. We had a lot of pretty good fighters come out of here.
I met up with Bobby Zell at the Boys Club and talked to him about maybe letting us use the Boys and Girls Club as a place to train, and he said, "Sure, that'd be great." And we got a few donations to where we got some robes and some shirts and equipment. I started the Kalamazoo KO Club.
Al Fracker and I were involved with that. We were trying to come up with a name, Kalamazoo Area Youth Organization. And the acronym turned out to be KO.
And like Woody Top, his method of operation was a little different. He'd take these fighters to different places to box on the weekend.
I stayed at the KO Club, I think it was like 5-6 years. We was one of the best amateur programs in the state.
KBA began to fade. Every now and then somebody would try to start a boxing club and get some fighters out, but it wasn't the same.
We don't have enough people who care to invest time and money in the kids.
And do you tell boxers who are usually not upper class, "I'm going to take you to a boxing show in Flint, but we need transportation money, and we need meal money, and we need maybe lodging money." The people that invested in the KBA were some of the influential people that had some money. The Parfits and so on, they could easily do that.
I went to Chicago to the Windy City gym, but it wasn't nothing like the Kalamazoo Boxing Academy.
I started training guys. I had 2 Armed Forces champions in Europe. Came back to Michigan, stopped at the Pride Gym where Floyd Mayweather Jr. trained and hired me to train. That year I had 11 guys, entered Golden Gloves in Western Michigan, and we had 8 champions.
In 1980, they started doing Tough Man competition. I participated in Tough Man competition in Kalamazoo, in Grand Rapids, in Jackson, and in Detroit, where they held the national Tough Man contest. I beat a gentleman by the name of Dwayne Edmond in the finals, and I won the Tough Man title. There was a movie called Tough Enough, and there's a very brief clip of me fighting in the nationals on there. Maybe they liked the outfit I was wearing. It was a blue USA tank top, the weight boxing trunks. Anyway, they used that in the movie.
Today, boxing to me is downhill. They're just having shows to get money.
Now they got these steroids and all this other stuff going on, the politics, and boxing today makes me feel kind of sad.
I think there was just too many greedy people in it, I think, and it kind of self-destructed.
I still think that Golden Gloves boxing is a great sport. It's not like it was in the 60s and 70s, but that, I believe, is not because the sport doesn't have an allure to it. It's because there's so many other things for kids to do. We have a lot of different sports, but I think there's always a place there for Golden Gloves.
There's a lot of money in MMA right now, and there's some money in boxing. I've seen some great fights in the last few months. Kalamazoo was a great boxing town, and I think it still could be. I'd like to see a revival, and I think Kalamazoo's a place for it.
I think boxing is good for kids if it's kept on the level of true, clean sportsmanship, but boxing was all around good for me. My mom doesn't think so, but I thought so.
I did hear some stuff, should you really be offering boxing at the Boys and Girls Club? And I said, absolutely we could, because it's meeting an unmet need. These kids could be out in the street boxing and beating up kids or getting into fights. We felt that this is the best way in which we can reach some of those troubled kids out there.
You get a 7 and an 8-year-old and a 10-year-old. You can start them out with a jab. In 10 minutes, you can have them 1, 2, roll, 2, 3, 2, pull, 2, 3, 2, 1, 1. And they are fascinated. I mean, their eyes are like, and their friends are watching them do these combinations that they never even knew they could do. You can't buy that kind of thrill, man. You can't buy that joy.
Can everybody stand, please? When I first heard about the passing of Coach Bridges, I gathered myself together and tried to put together a prayer in my mind, because I knew when I lost Coach Bridges, I lost a part of me.
Eddie Bridges died in September of 2018. Former KBA boxers gathered from all over the country to attend his memorial service in Kalamazoo. In that same year, Henry Grooms returned to Kalamazoo for a visit and invited the KBA boxers to a small reunion at the Kalamazoo House Bed and Breakfast. The outpouring of laughter and tears at these gatherings speaks to the impact that Henry Grooms and Eddie Bridges had on their fighters.
The KBA fighters keep coming to the hotel some 35 years back, 30 years back.
Training at the Kalamazoo Boxing Academy, I learned family there. We're a very close family.
Grooms and Eddie Bridges taught me. They taught me everything from their heart. And when I train fighters, I train them from my heart.
Somebody asked me, where did you get the idea to develop the Kalamazoo Boxing Academy? You know, to create one took, first and foremost, individuals like Ted Parfit, Jim Gilmore, individuals who felt really in depth about helping people.
Not only did they corral young people, gave them something to do off the street, but they found purpose. I'm so thankful for Hank Grooms, giving us such a great opportunity.
And I was able to take a lot of the experiences that I had from boxing into the Kalamazoo community. I'm really honored to have been a part of the greatest boxing era in the history of Kalamazoo.
We've become better men.
Henry Grooms, Eddie Bridges, thank you. You know, because that was a great ride, man.
The KBA Boxing Academy was one of the best experiences I ever had. It made me a stronger person, a smarter person, a wiser person.
The space downtown where the Boxing Academy once stood is now the location of the Kalamazoo Valley Museum. Families step into this building every day without ever knowing that boxing history was made 50 years ago in this very space. When you hear names like Leon Spinks and Floyd Mayweather, remember that these men were touched by the city of Kalamazoo. Like the humble trainer Eddie Bridges, the legacy of the Kalamazoo Boxing Academy is quiet and unassuming, but it's there, an unmistakable glimmer in Kalamazoo's history. The Kalamazoo Boxing Academy and its fighters will never be forgotten.
Boxing found me. I'm very proud to say that I was a Kalamazoo Boxing Academy fighter. I was a champion. I am a champion. That's a good way to end. A champion. I'm done.